Good afternoon, and welcome back to the show. I'm Anna.
And I'm Brian. Today, we're tackling one of the most common and important conversational topics: how to talk about your country in English, moving beyond Wikipedia facts to share your unique perspective.
Absolutely. For English learners, this topic is often the moment you are asked to represent an entire culture. The pressure can lead to simple, dry answers. Our goal is to make your description rich, engaging, and personal.
The fundamental shift needed is moving from information dump to identity share. Instead of listing GDP or population, focus on what your country feels like and how it shaped you.
To start, we need to categorize your country's description into three zones: the hard facts, geography, politics; the soft culture, food, music, customs; and the personal narrative, your experience, your favorite place.
Most people default to the hard facts, which are easy to research but difficult to connect with. The true richness lies in the soft culture and your personal narrative. That's where conversation flourishes.
We introduce the rule of three dimensions. When describing any aspect of your country, provide three sensory details. What does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel or smell like?
For instance, don't just say, "We have busy markets." Say, "The markets are a sensory overload. The vibrant red and orange spices, look, the constant sound of vendors bartering, sound, and the warm, thick air, feel."
This technique elevates your English from purely transactional language to descriptive, engaging storytelling. It invites the listener into your world.
Another core foundational skill is mastering comparative English. You are often speaking to someone whose country is your only reference point. Use simple comparison language.
For example, the scale of our public transport is similar to Tokyo's, but the architecture is much older, more like Rome's. This immediately gives the listener an anchor for understanding.
The ultimate goal of this first phase is to recognize that your individual experience, your life, is the most interesting data point about your country.
Let's elaborate on the psychological impact of the identity share. When you share personal details, you activate the listener's empathy, building rapport instantly. When you shift the focus from "my country is X" to "my life in my country is Y," you manage anxiety because you are now talking about something only you are an expert on, your own feelings.
Expanding on the rule of three dimensions, we can apply it to abstract concepts. If describing the national spirit, a difficult abstract concept, you can say, "It looks like resilience in the face of setbacks, it sounds like laughter during family gatherings, and it feels like a deep, unspoken sense of community." We are using concrete, sensory language to describe an intangible national characteristic.
We must also prepare for the simplification trap. When asked about your history, avoid the tendency to oversimplify or generalize complex events. Practice two-sentence summaries of complex historical moments that are objective but clear. For example, the country gained independence in 1947, a highly complex process marked by political division and mass migration, leading to the creation of two separate nations.
To practice comparative English effectively, create a mental list of 3 easy comparison points for your major cities. Use modifiers like, "It's as modern as, but less organized than, X," or "The food scene is less formal than, Y, but the flavors are much bolder." This strategic use of comparative adjectives adds complexity and depth to your description instantly.
The key takeaway from this expanded foundation is recognizing that effective communication is about bridging understanding. Your unique job is to provide the listener with vivid, relatable bridges, primarily through sensory detail and comparative language, to minimize their cognitive effort in understanding your home.
Welcome back. We're moving into the specifics of language, focusing on how to describe your country's physical characteristics, moving beyond big and cold.
The landscape is the physical stage for your culture. We need robust vocabulary to describe its geography, climate, and unique natural features.
Let's tackle geography. Instead of We have mountains. Use words like jagged peaks, rolling hills, vast plains, or coastal cliffs. This provides immediate visual detail.
If you have flat land, avoid flat. Use sprawling plateaus, fertile valleys, or undulating terrain. The words themselves paint the picture.
For climate, move beyond hot and cold. Use terms like temperate climate, subtropical humidity, arid desert, or monsoon season. This shows sophistication and accuracy.
When describing the feel of the weather, use adjectives like balmy, pleasantly warm, brisk, cold but refreshing, oppressive, intensely hot and humid, or drizzle, light rain.
The tactic here is to always connect the physical description to a human experience. How does the geography impact the daily routine?
For instance, the rugged terrain means that our intercity travel often involves long, winding journeys, but it keeps our smaller mountain villages beautifully secluded.
This connects the geography, rugged terrain, to the human consequence, secluded villages, which is much more interesting than a simple map description.
Finally, use metaphorical landscape language. Describe the city as a concrete jungle or the coastline as a ribbon of sand meeting the sea. Metaphors are excellent cultural tools.
Let's expand on the technical vocabulary needed for climate. Learners often struggle to differentiate common terms. When talking about seasonal changes, use cyclical weather patterns, sharp seasonal contrast, or mild winters. This avoids generic statements. If the weather is unusual, use unpredictable microclimates or seasonal anomalies. We must stress the accurate use of prepositions, such as in the shadow of the mountains or perched on the edge of the cliff.
We need to explore the concept of landscape modifiers. These are pairs of words that provide nuanced descriptions. For mountains, use snow-capped imposing peaks or gently sloping forested hills. For water, use turbulent, choppy seas or serene, glassy lakes. Practice constructing descriptive phrases using adjective, noun to elevate the English.
For humanizing the geography, every statement must prompt a conversational follow-up. If you say, "We rely heavily on river systems because of the arid climate," the listener will naturally ask, "How does that impact agriculture?" If you say, "The vast coastal region is the heart of our tourism," they will ask, "Which specific beaches are the most popular?" Your vocabulary is now a tool for prompting deeper engagement.
We must also address regional variations. If your country is large, dedicate 2 specific phrases to the north, south, east, and west. For example, the north is characterized by its harsher climate and resilient local customs, while the south enjoys a subtropical, laid-back atmosphere.
This shows the complexity and variety that tourists often miss. The strategic goal of this vocabulary acquisition is to give the learner the precise linguistic tools needed to paint a sophisticated, multifaceted picture of their physical home, proving that their English is capable of depth and nuance.
Welcome back. The physical scene is set. Now we move to the heart of the conversation, describing your culture's practices, rituals, and tastes. This is where the rule of 3 dimensions is essential.
When discussing food, you must avoid just naming dishes. Connect the food to the social ritual, the ingredients, and the emotional context.
Instead of "we eat rice and curry," say "the central meal is a fragrant curry served with fluffy steamed rice. The social ritual is that everyone gathers around the same large bowl, sharing the meal as a community."
For describing the food itself, use rich adjectives like earthy, zesty, aromatic, spicy, savory, or pungent. This gives the listener an immediate flavor profile.
Next, customs and etiquette. These are often fascinating to foreigners, but are easy to miscommunicate. Use clear verbs and phrasing to explain expected behavior.
For example, it is customary to remove your shoes before entering a home, or we generally address our elders with a specific honorific to show respect. Focus on the action and the reason.
When discussing festivals, structure your description around the temporal flow, what happens before, during, and after.
Before. Families spend weeks preparing special sweets and cleaning the house. During, the streets erupt in colorful parades and music. After, the day is concluded with a large family feast and quiet reflection. This tells a story.
We must also address the concept of cultural nuance. Acknowledge that practices vary by generation or region. This shows a sophisticated understanding of your own society.
You could say, while the younger generation mostly communicates digitally, the tradition of extended family gatherings remains central to our identity. This balances the modern and the traditional.
This entire section revolves around turning dry cultural facts into emotionally resonant, sequenced narratives that are easy for the listener to follow.
Let's detail the language of food rituals. We must use precise vocabulary for how food is prepared and consumed. Use verbs like simmered, marinated, sautéed, or deep-fried. Describe the ingredients using words like freshly ground spices, seasonal produce, or heirloom vegetables. The language makes the food sound valuable and complex. We need to practice the sensory food hook. The dish is a rich red color. Look. The smell of cumin is intensely aromatic. Smell. And the texture is a balance of crispy edges and soft center. Feel or texture.
Expanding on etiquette verbs, the learner should practice the structure. In our culture, it is considered respectful, polite, or customary to verb phrase. Examples, it is customary to decline a gift twice before accepting it, or it is polite to maintain indirect eye contact with elders. This removes ambiguity and provides a clear cultural guideline.
For festival descriptions, we need specific language for sights and sounds. Use words like dazzling display, reverberating drums, a cacophony of sound, or intricate traditional attire. The key is to convey the excitement and scale. Practice sequencing words. First, the procession begins. Subsequently, the main ceremony takes place. Finally, the evening concludes with a large family feast and quiet reflection.
We must also prepare for the challenging questions about less positive cultural practices. The answer must be honest and balanced. A good response structure is acknowledge the complexity, provide context, and state the current trend. Example, yes, there are complex issues regarding gender roles. Acknowledge. This is rooted in historical economic structures, not modern law. However, educational attainment and urban trends are leading to rapid and significant shifts today. This demonstrates critical thinking and fluency.
The goal is to paint a picture of culture that is dynamic, not static, showing the listener that your country is a living, evolving entity, full of internal contradictions and beauty.
Welcome back. The most difficult conversations often involve history and politics. Navigating these requires objectivity and a measured tone.
The first rule is know your boundary. Decide ahead of time which topics are too sensitive or personal to discuss with a stranger. It is perfectly acceptable to politely redirect.
The technique for redirecting is the acknowledge and pivot. Acknowledge the question's importance, but redirect to a safer topic. That's a complex political issue that requires a lot of context. Acknowledge. On a related note, have you seen the recent economic reforms? That's something fascinating to discuss. Pivot.
When discussing historical events, use language that conveys scale and significance without becoming overly emotional. Pivotal moments, defining conflicts, eras of immense upheaval, or foundational treaties.
Use the cause, consequence, current impact structure for historical events. This provides a clear, logical framework for the listener.
Example, the colonial era led to the establishment of new administrative systems. Cause, which resulted in long-term economic disparities. Consequence, today we still see these disparities impacting current educational funding. Current impact.
When discussing politics, focus on the system rather than the individuals. Describe the structure. We operate as a parliamentary democracy with decentralized federal powers. Use clear technical terms.
Always use attribution language to distance your opinion from fact. Many citizens believe that X, or the current administration claims Z, or analysts predict Z. This shows you are reporting, not arguing.
Finally, avoid jargon specific to your local politics. If you must mention a specific party, quickly define their ideology. The blank party, which is generally seen as fiscally conservative and socially liberal. This shows you are reporting, not arguing.
Let's detail the language of polite redirection. If someone presses you on a sensitive political figure, use phrases like, "To discuss that fairly, we would need much more time than we have," or "I prefer to focus on the cultural aspects of my country, which I know best." The tone must be firm but pleasant, projecting confidence in your boundary.
For historical narratives, learners must master temporal markers and causal language. Use phrases like subsequently, concurrently, as a direct result of, and this eventually culminated in. This shows intellectual control over the narrative flow. We must practice describing foundational texts or documents using terms like constitutional framework, founding principles, or amendments.
Expanding on the political system description, specify the type of system using technical but clear terms. We have a bicameral legislature, or the judiciary operates independently of the executive branch. This conveys a precise, professional level of English. Practice destruction. The primary challenge in our current political climate is bridging the gap between urban development and rural investment. This frames the political situation as a solvable systemic challenge.
A crucial element is handling stereotypes. If a listener brings up a common negative stereotype about your country, the best approach is to validate, contextualize, and contrast. Example, that stereotype about X being true is often exaggerated, but it does reflect an issue we had 20 years ago, rooted in lack of infrastructure. Today, you would find that the reality is dramatically different, particularly in areas like technology and education. This refutes the stereotype without dismissing the underlying history.
The overall strategy for sensitive topics is one of measured transparency. Be transparent about the complexity, measured in your language, and always maintain your personal boundary. Welcome back. We've mastered the facts, the culture, and the sensitive topics. The final piece is the most engaging, weaving your personal story into the national tapestry.
This is the connection zone. The listener doesn't just want facts. They want to know how living in your country has shaped your perspective on life, work, and community.
Use the impact statement. Connect a characteristic of your country to a characteristic of yourself. For example, the emphasis on hospitality in my culture made me much more outgoing and open to strangers.
Share local secrets and hidden gems. Talk about the small, specific place that tourists never see. This gives the listener a sense of exclusivity and deeper insight.
Instead of recommending the National Monument, recommend your favorite quiet coffee shop near the old university, or a specific bench in a forgotten park. Describe it using vivid sensory detail from Part 1.
Use the relational storytelling technique. Tell a brief, specific anecdote about an experience that illustrates a national value.
Example. Instead of saying, "We value community," tell the story. Last year, when my neighbor's car broke down, 3 different families stopped their day and helped fix it right there in the street. That small moment showed me the true meaning of collective responsibility.
We must emphasize the language of personal identity. I feel a deep sense of belonging here. My biggest challenge living here is, or the thing I miss most when I travel is. When discussing your decision to learn English, connect it to your country's future. I learned English not just for my career, but because I want to connect my country's story to the rest of the world.
The personal narrative is the ultimate antidote to generalization. It shows the listener the human face of your national identity. Let's define the language for sharing local secrets. Use phrases like, "If you want the truly authentic experience, you must visit," or "The place I recommend that no tourist knows about is." Describe the atmosphere using adjectives like unassuming, venerable, hidden, or time-worn. This language conveys authenticity and discovery.
Expanding on the relational storytelling technique, structure the anecdote using situation, action, realization. Situation: my flight was canceled during the main festival. Action: a complete stranger invited me to stay at his family's house for the night. Realization: that experience taught me the true depth of local hospitality. This three-part structure makes the story effective, concise, and illustrative of a national trait.
We must also emphasize the language of leaving or returning. If the learner is abroad, they will be asked if they plan to return. The answer should be framed as a choice related to professional or personal growth. Use terms like, my long-term goal is to bring the skills I've gained back home to contribute to X. Or, I am currently balancing the opportunity here with my strong desire to be close to my family. This makes the choice sophisticated.
Finally, practice the language of affection and critique. A sophisticated speaker can critique their home while still expressing affection. Use the structure, I genuinely love aspect X, but I find aspect Y to be a significant challenge. Example, I love the intense family closeness and support, but I sometimes find the lack of personal space and expectation of privacy to be challenging. This shows maturity and objectivity.
Welcome back for our final review. We've covered the structure, vocabulary, cultural nuance, and the personal narrative needed to speak about your country effectively.
The final step is consistent practice and building the confidence to engage with these deep topics.
Review the 3 core tactics. 1. The rule of 3 dimensions, sensory details. 2. Comparative English, using the listener's reference points. 3. Relational storytelling, connecting facts to personal experience.
Create a fact card with 5 key details for each of the 6 topics we covered: geography, climate, food, festivals, history, and personal impact. Memorize the complex vocabulary associated with those 30 points.
Practice the 3-minute drill. Set a timer and attempt to speak for 3 minutes about one of the 6 topics without stopping, focusing only on using descriptive adjectives and complex verbs. Don't worry about perfection.
Use the voice note method. Record yourself practicing your descriptions on your phone. Listen back, analyze where you hesitated, and isolate those specific sentences or phrases for re-practice.
Embrace the identity of the cultural ambassador. Your goal is not to pass a test, but to share knowledge. When you adopt this mindset, your anxiety naturally shifts from performance fear to educational excitement.
Remember that every conversation where you talk about your country is a chance to refine your English and deepen your own understanding of your home.
Start today by applying the rule of 3 dimensions to your favorite place.
It's a rewarding journey of language and self-discovery. Thank you for joining us.
We'll be back next week to discuss techniques for public speaking in English.
Until then, share your story.
Goodbye for now.